Good evening, or good late afternoon. It's Friday, Good Friday, and Easter and Passover on the same day. They always come close together, but very seldom do they come on the same day. And this is a Shabbat also. It's Friday night, and this is a Shabbat night. This is the Sabbath. But in the Judeo-Christian world, Good Friday, Passover, Easter Sunday, this is a very, very sacred time. To my Jewish friends, have a blessed Passover. To my Christian friends, have a beautiful, beautiful Easter. Again, now I'm going to thank you, so many of you. I know you're checking me out. Oh, wait, look at the lightning. I know you're checking me out because the views keep changing. I also have the time to go to your profiles. So I am checking all of you out also. You come from all walks of life, all persuasions, all states. My heavens. From California to New York, from Washington to Florida. Oh, so many of you are viewing my story, Committed to Love. I will be reading about the same time every night for months. But that's what I'm supposed to be doing now with my time, spending a half an hour or so every day, barring bad weather and unforeseen circumstances. But I will be sharing a story of love and loss, of hope and of faith. So don't feel sad for me, though you may find my story sad. But I think personally, as a movie person, that the greatest love stories ever told can have tragedy. The Notebook was a classic example of long-term with Alzheimer's. Titanic, what a blockbuster that was at the end. Yes, she did well toward the end, but think about how her love died. So don't feel sad for me, because all these years later, I'm still here, I'm still talking, and I'm still telling people, don't stop. Maybe some of you are not going to want to hear anymore. That's okay. Friends, people you don't know, people come and go in your life. Some stay for longer, and some have shorter seasons. Don't try to hold on to people. Let them be who they are, and if they're meant to go, let them go. I learned that a long time ago with Jeffrey. I couldn't change him. I could only make my choices, and I had to let him go. I let him be him, and yes, it took his life being who he was. But that's just the way it is. So it's 5:30. Where I left off is we had the diagnosis. I'm just giving you a little bit. We had the diagnosis. Our fears came true. But you go to SusieMintz.com and you can read the Committed to Love short version or any other things you want, the media. It's all there. But AIDS came along in 81. His promiscuity caught up with him. We had the dreaded diagnosis. And all I keep doing with every chapter is telling you how this story may not be for you, but you don't know where your journey's going. It's not over till it's over. And just to go through my table of contents, the journey begins, the honeymoon in Spain, the fear factor, choosing celibacy, and the next one is the dreaded diagnosis. Then I was into no more lies, questioning, is there a God? The frustration factor, stability, transitions, who will care for me, facing my fears, long-term plans. This is 24 chapters of issues. This is not a science fiction movie. I don't like science fiction. And I can't listen to country western because it makes me want to pass a kidney stone. I mean, everybody's leaving each other, having a problem with each other, and but it's good because it's part of life. Country western music is incredible. It's just not my cup of tea. And science fiction, not for me. But it doesn't mean it's wonderful. That's why there's all these things that are out there now. You can choose what makes you happy. You can choose what you want to watch. You can choose so much. But don't feel sad for me. Sad is on TV. If you want sad, turn on the news. Because I'm not sad. I got issues, and I'm not always happy, a lot. But turn on the TV and see what's going on if you want sad. Feel sorry for the people who are suffering in Israel from the attacks, or the Ukrainians who are going through. So don't feel sorry for me. Be grateful and glad that at my age, I'm able to read and see and talk to you about a book and issues that meant so much to me. Your time and my time. This is our time together. I'm going to review. I'm going to start with chapter 5 and just go through a little bit of this again. And this is when Jeff was put in the hospital on June 21st, 1992. I always have to go back and give you a little because then you'll know where I'm coming from. And some of you have gone back to past readings / episodes. That's the way it is. I was standing outside your hospital room waiting for your parents to arrive. I had to tell his parents. I was exhausted and thought I was going to faint. The wall was the only thing holding me up. One of your nurses, and I said she contacted me, by the way. One of your nurses came over and said, quote, "You need a hug, and then you need to eat and get away from this room. You can't do anything for your husband now, and he's going to need you later. You've got to take care of yourself. You've been carrying around a heavy burden for a long time. Many of you have been carrying around burdens for a very long time. I'm terribly sorry about what you're going through, and I understand your pain. My brother died from AIDS 2 years ago. Everyone involved suffers with this disease. Everyone suffers with a lot of illnesses. Unless you're isolated on an island and you don't have anybody in your life, people suffer with you, just differently. I started crying again. She brought over a box of tissues and shoved them under my arm. Her caring gesture made me smile. I said, when I called Jeff's parents, I told them he had been taken ill and was in the hospital. I asked them to please come immediately. We needed them. How could I tell them any more over the phone? She said something to me I'll never forget. She said, Susan, please, people, listen to this. You will deal with it at some point. I hope you don't, but many of you will. This is why I say share, pass it on, do this. She said, Susan, you might lose a husband, but they are going to lose a child. She understood how difficult this would be for everyone. This is where I'm going to start a new reading. Jeff, did you know that our parents had been friends for 40 years? When you were adopted, your parents sent mine the announcement. Troy was a small town. Troy, New York was a small town, and everyone in the Jewish community knew your parents wanted a child for a long time. One day your parents went to New York City and came back with a beautiful 6-week-old baby boy named Jeffrey Allen Mintz. Boy, I'm all chilled again. God, I get so chilled when I read some of this. You were the perfect child. I remember the first book we unpacked when we moved into our apartment. It was entitled, quote, The Chosen Baby, end quote. Your rabbi gave it to your parents when they brought you home. I still have the book. You were the chosen baby who grew up to be a remarkable human being. The sun rose on your beautiful face and set on your gentle nature. How could you not love this man? He had an issue. He liked men once in a while. He was a gay, but you couldn't help but love him. You are a wonderful son who adored your parents. You brought them such joy and pleasure. Your relationship with them was always special. I envied and admired it because I didn't have the communication and understanding with my parents growing up. You never argued, said anything unkind, or had any conflicts. Well, that would surface later on. After we got married, I knew I'd inherited 2 other parents. Hear this, folks. After we got married, I knew I'd inherited 2 other parents. I respected the bond you had with them and never interfered or tried to compete. It would have been a futile battle. A parent's love is sacred and special. I knew as your wife what role I was to play and what part of you I could have. And they loved me because I loved you, and they trusted me. And I think that's what's so important. And I said this before. One Friday night at his parents' home, I said that I would, to his mother, I will love you. I said I would love your son. I will live with him and I will take very good care of him. But you're his mother. If there's anything you take away from tonight, take away that you may marry a son, you may marry a daughter, but please try to respect the bond that they have. It'll make your life much easier. Even if you go home and you hammer nails into something because you didn't want to do it, trust me on this one. As ill as you were able to tell me what you wanted. You asked me to call your parents and tell them what was happening and why. I dreaded making that call. But if they wanted to see their son alive, I had to do it now. Jeff, as terrified as I was to tell your parents, another part of me was relieved. I'd wanted them to know for so long. But why did they have to find out like this? If you had been honest with your parents, I'd been able to share my feelings with another woman who loved you as much as I did. Do you know how much I needed to talk to your mother about our life? I loved her, Jeff. She wasn't my mother-in-law. No, she wasn't my mother-in-law. She was your mother. Therefore, she was mine. I hated you for deceiving them, and I resented you for not allowing me to share my feelings with her. When I desperately needed a friend to talk to, she would have been there. When I questioned my marriage and my life with its complex and painful conditions, she would have listened. They were wonderful parents. But I think really this part of the whole chapter is so important because relationships are difficult. But what I'm talking about is love. Really love. And I think we need that today more than ever. So please try to be patient and try to be kind. But what I'm reading now is just so important. Because that's where I said I have no regrets. I know I did it right. You've given me the same rough times and difficult challenges, but I know if I can do this, I can do anything. How are your parents going to be able to cope? How will I find the strength to tell them? Why did you wait until you were dying to give me this responsibility? Why did you need to be perfect? Why couldn't you have trusted your parents' love and have accepted yourself? I loved you no matter what you were. You had an unconditional love relationship with your parents, and he would have. Nothing would have changed that. Had you been honest with yourself years ago, you could have spared everyone so much sorrow. I told you your past will catch up with you. Had you been honest with yourself years ago, You could have spared everyone so much sorrow. Just last month, we were all having dinner together. You looked wonderful and acted as if everything was perfect. They didn't know you hadn't been feeling well, and they certainly never noticed any symptoms. No, I covered his symptoms up a lot with makeup, bundled him up. No, I covered him up and we handled it. Now it's too late, and you can't hide the truth from them. What do I say? Quote, Mom and Dad, your son might die from a life-threatening illness that doesn't have a cure, end quote. When they ask me how you got AIDS, I can say, quote, Jeff is bisexual. He's had many affairs with men over the years and contracted this disease from having unsafe, unprotected sex. How do I tell your parents this? Here's a big one. It's Sunday, June 21st, 1992, and it's Father's Day. I have to read a little more, definitely, but think about what I'm talking about. It's Father's Day. Do you think they even knew about AIDS? Maybe they'd heard about it on the news. Maybe they knew because they heard about it. But who would ever have thought that Jeff could have contracted this? This was my secret. Do you know how much I wanted to tell people? When I called, I chose my words carefully. They lived in Hollywood, Florida at the time we were in Boca. When I called, I chose my words carefully, giving them very little information over the phone. I could barely contain myself, and I didn't want to break down during our conversation. I told them you were ill, and they should come immediately to the hospital. I gave them the directions and said I'd wait outside the room. As I watched your parents walk down the corridor, I fell apart. When they saw the terrible condition I was in, they knew something serious had happened. It was horrible, Jeff. Seeing them affected me more than I'd expected. I tried so hard to keep myself together, but couldn't. My heart ached for them. I think my heart ached for them more than for you at that time. I couldn't look them in the eyes. My stomach was in my throat. I was shaking and crying hysterically, choking on my words. I wasn't making any sense. Finally, I reached out, and I took their hands. I held them so tightly. I put my arms around each of them, hugging them as if they would disappear within an instant. Through my tears and broken sounds, I said, quote, Jeff has AIDS, end quote. Remember, again, I'm talking about 1992. I'm talking about a woman who loved her husband no matter what, because I know that God wanted me to do this. I know I wanted to do it, and I to this day believe that it's my faith that got me through, and it's my faith that continues talking into this phone every night, because it's what God wants me to do. As they entered the room, you were delirious with 104-degree fevers. You were trying to rip the oxygen tube from your nose. A machine monitoring your vital signs was attached to your chest. Both arms had IVs coming out of them. Some of you might find this difficult also because you've dealt with COVID. You haven't dealt with AIDS. Hi, David. You hadn't dealt with AIDS. You're dealing with COVID. Yeah. You want to walk into someone's room, but they wouldn't even let you in the room with COVID. You couldn't see what was going on. Both arms had IVs coming out of them. One was a dextrose solution for dehydration, and the other was an antibiotic for the pneumonia. There were gloves, masks, gowns, and supplies everywhere. You were in a private room, in isolation, and your condition was guarded. There had been only one other AIDS patient on the floor during that past year. This is a big medical center, West Boca Medical Center. But it didn't have the epidemic perhaps that San Francisco had or New York had or other big cities. This was Boca Raton, Florida, the heart of everything gorgeous and glitzy and perfect. No, to this day it's not perfect, though I love it here. How this deadly virus was transmitted was of serious concern to everyone. People were being professional and performing their duties, but they were treating you like a leper. I understood their attitude, but hated it. I'd lived with you for 23 years, and I was healthy. Haven't you people heard? Quote, you don't get AIDS from loving someone, end quote. That's a lecture series I have on my website. Of course, if you click through all the icons, you're going to know everything, but there is one that says you don't get AIDS from loving somebody. That's my lecture series that I've done in schools, churches. I've done interviews for 20, 30 years, and you don't get AIDS from loving someone. At bookstores, a little bit more. So I want to respect your time, but I really feel like this is important on this Good Friday, on the Shabbat, on Passover, on Easter, when we're all reflecting perhaps on people you've loved or on people you've lost or on the future that you will have if you just don't give up. Don't ever give up. And if you do, go back into my book. Go get that book, and you go back into it and see a woman who's never given up. I won't. My series is coming, and one of you out there knows that right person. My series is coming. You may want to quit in the middle of this book, or you may want to not be involved. You don't want to go. You don't want to view. That's fine. I don't blame you. It might be hard for me also, but I know that I am one person away from a series that you wouldn't put down. You will binge it on a Friday night, Saturday. If this were a series cast right with the right people, you would not turn it off. That's how good this book is if done right. And right would be streaming. So one of you out there is going to connect me, and it's going to work. It was your parents' time to say, I love you, to their son. I was thankful we hadn't waited any longer. They'd arrived in time, and you were alive. Though seeing you this way was difficult, oh, it could have been so much worse. Oh, Jeff, if we were unprepared for this and in shock, how could they possibly comprehend the magnitude and gravity of the situation? What must your parents be thinking? Our marriage and life was centered around homosexuality. We were knowledgeable about AIDS and had known many that died. We knew you were at risk and might become HIV positive. However, until we heard the actual diagnosis, we were naive to think we were prepared for this. We'd never be ready to hear those terrifying words. Only one thing was certain at this time. The four of us would face this crisis together and somehow manage to deal with it. We would support, comfort, and reassure each other. One more paragraph. I don't want to give it up. And I'm the writer. I don't read it very often. I've only read it one time, which I thought was going to be the Audible that was going to be all over the place, and that fell through after I read it because it didn't get completed. Hello, Karen Marie. Thank you. One more. I have to do this. All they wanted was to see their son. They wanted to touch you. And remember, this was not COVID. This is not where we are, that you couldn't be with your loved one at this critical time. People passed and you couldn't be with them. This is 1992. All right? It's a whole different ball game. All they wanted was to see their son. They wanted to touch you, to comfort you, to love you. Your mom spoke first. She said, quote, Jeff, your parents are here, and we love you, honey. End quote. Dad, I'm going to take my temperature after this because I'm so chilled I think I have a fever, and I don't. Dad said, quote, you're the best son in the world. You've done everything right. Just get better and live. Please, Jeff, you must fight to live, end quote. They wanted you to know you weren't alone. Your family was here. You had our love, respect, and acceptance. I was thankful they never asked me any questions. Why were you ill? How did you get sick? Or anything else that didn't matter now. On that Father's Day in June, all your parents wanted was to look at their son and be there for you. I must end because I am not holding it together right now. I don't think you're ever prepared, honestly. We had, let's say I had already gotten involved with AIDS organizations locally. I felt it was going to happen, so I kind of built myself a cushion of people just to protect myself and get some information and some knowledge. And, I mean, it happened so long ago, I don't remember who, what, or where, but I know I was educated into it. And I know I spoke to people, not necessarily at that personal level, but I was asking a lot about AIDS. But until we heard about it, and I had to tell your parents, I was going robotically through my life in many ways, but on that diagnosis day in the hospital, I mean, I was so confused. That's where the writing helped so. But to tell your parents who adored you, that was tough. And I think that's what just got to me, as to how much they loved him unconditionally. And had I really been able to share my pain with them and my life, it would have made it so much better. So today, on this great Friday, Good Friday, Shabbat Friday, Passover Friday, and Easter, I beg you to please reach out and touch someone with a phone call or a hug, or tell them you love them. Please don't let it be too late, because things happen so quickly. Life changes and turns on a dime. So please do yourself that favor. I will be reading again. I like the 5:30, 6 o'clock time. I wish you were on the radio and I could talk to you. I'm Sirius XM. No, I'm Sirius Susan Mintz. Sirius XM. Is that it? I don't know, but if it is, Sirius XM, Sirius Susan Mintz. But I must share this with you because it's a decree from the Lord himself. And please do what your heart tells you to do. You'll get through it. No matter how rough life is, it's not over till your very last breath. I bid you all, and you know what I'm going to say. Shalom. Hello? Shalom, goodbye. And shalom, peace. I did very well tonight holding it together because I thought I was going to lose it. But I kept it together. But it's okay to cry. Crying is a natural emotion. You cry if you need to. And if people think you're crying because you're afraid, or crying because you're sad, or you're crying, what do you care what people think? Just feel. Feel. And I'll be back again. I'm asking you to share. Share with your friends. Share with your family. The reason this is working is because I know you're listening and watching when it's convenient. That's why it's on my Facebook page, because it'll be there as long as I want it to, which is probably indefinitely, because I'm going to be reading probably for a few months. So prepare yourself for long nights if you haven't gotten caught up. So anyway, share, love, shalom. Have a blessed, blessed Passover and a blessed, blessed Easter. And I thank you all so much. God bless you, and let me hit finish.